We're going to close out credit with just talking about the 5 C's of credit worthiness. All right. Now, you guys should take a picture of this. One is character, otherwise known as stability and credit history. How long have you lived at your current address? How long have you been in your current job, or whether you've had a good record of paying your bills on time in full. So when people look at you and say, hey, am I going to be a bank or a lending institution says, hey, I'm considering lending money to this person, these are the things you're going to look at. These are the things you should always focus on. It's the 5 C's of credit worthiness. So the first one is character. You know, how good are you? Are you really following the rules? Are you paying on time? Are you, you have stability and those sort of things. Next, we talk about is capacity. Your ability to repay the loan based on the debt that you have. Are you carrying too much debt? Like I said, it gets back to that word I've been saying throughout the program of desperation. Are you looking desperate? Are you handling things? You have a lot of available credit. You've been very responsible, and you can handle the new loan that you're looking to apply for. Next one is capital. How much of your own money have you invested in yourself or in your business? People like to see that. Like, if you're going to come across and you're going to promote, like someone mentioned, selling apparel, selling cars, like, are you willing to invest in yourself? Are you willing to put yourself on the line? Like, even when people, start off working for somebody and then want to transition to working for themselves, to really become successful as an entrepreneur, there's a point where you have to take the plunge, where you have to be like, okay, I am ready to put full-time effort in this, because half-time effort will give half results. And, to me, the point is when I know I was ready to leave working for somebody, work for myself, when it is more expensive for me to go to work than it is to work for myself. And I say that meaning that it's costing me to go to work now. I'm losing business opportunities. I'm not making as much at work as I am doing what I'm doing on the side. I've seen the growth. I feel the energy. I feel like this is and not fooling myself, being very real with myself, that I have really built a solid foundation where it's time for me to transition. And sometimes people are scared of change. And a lot of times people are scared of success. People I've spoken to, and they have everything in order to succeed, but they're just scared to take that plunge because they're scared of success and they're scared of the unknown. And, I welcome the unknown, I never even would ever want to meet with a fortune teller. I don't need to know my future. I'm very happy with my present, and whatever is free down the road, I'll help navigate that and make it happen. So, I'm not scared of the unknown, and I'm not scared to invest in myself and believe in myself but being real with myself. I know there's a lot of things that I need self-improvement on, even working my employees. Sometimes when things are being pressured, I know I can come across very harsh. So I need to take a step back, breathe a little, make sure I'm communicating in a way that people are not offended by it. So I think that when you're looking to move on and do something, you really have to be real with yourself. And I'm always really judging myself and making sure I'm working on the things that I need to work on to better myself. So those are things, but don't be scared of the unknown, and don't be scared to take a calculated risk where you've done your homework, you've done your research. And to reducing the risk and reducing the fear is just to know. If you feel you're nervous and scared, then learn more about what you're getting into. Speak to people, research it, and that should reduce the fear. Next thing, collateral. Assets that can be used as security for loan and repayment. You see, back to my previous slide, when we say assets that can be used as security. I'm sorry for all of you clothes lovers. They're not going to use your cell phone and your pair of jeans. And it's a funny thing. I have a friend, a doctor friend, and she was going through some things, and she had her own practice. This is a successful doctor, and she had to move offices. And since she was looking to get a new office, a new business, she's a doctor. And I said, just because you're a medical professional, that doesn't mean business-wise you may have it together. So this place that she was looking for, she needed to get a loan, and they asked for collateral. And she asked me, Sean, can she use her only assets she had over the years were just her work computer and her equipment for her medical practice. And I said, the bank is not going to accept that as collateral. Like, over the years, she loves to buy shoes. She loves to buy clothes. She loves to travel. And she didn't gather any assets that was looked upon that the bank could use to leverage so that she could get the loan she was looking to reopen her business. And unfortunately, she couldn't get a loan. So with the things that people have said earlier, and she had her house filled, her apartment filled with all of her medical equipment, with all of the computers, all the stuff she had to remove out of her previous office, and it had no value. But had she had a house, had she had real estate, had she had bonds, stocks, mutual fund, things that we talked about as far as appreciating assets, she would have been able to leverage those things to get the loan that she needed to move her business forward. Conditions. Circumstances that maybe affected your ability to repay the loan. Health of business, competition, market conditions. You know, when it comes to business, people will say, I have a business where it's so unique, there's no competitors. And whatever business you choose, whatever field you, banks, lenders, investors want to know that you have thoroughly looked at the scope of your business and you understand all the dynamics. Meaning that it's not a good thing to say, there's nobody else that's doing what I'm doing. There's nobody else in this business. You have to identify competitors. You have to identify the scope and the global understanding of the business you're about to get into. Once you see like, hey, you know who your competitors are, you know what makes you different, you know what makes you unique, you know what makes you going to be able to succeed in this industry, that looks like you know what you're doing. Versus, oh, it's just me, it's my unique idea, nobody else is doing it, you know. And even to be successful, you know, what the wealth mindset is, you don't need to create the wheel, you just need to add function to the wheel. Like, okay, if the wheel is already created, but the wheel is sliding throughout the winter, you could be the person that created winter tires. You didn't create the tire, you just created winter tires to stop it from sliding. You know, and even other mindset, if you can think of things that where technology can help make this thing work better or function better, then you're on a roll. So you don't have to like spend countless nights figuring out what am I going to create? Just think of ways in which you can improve something, make it work better, make it function better. A small little tweak can make you millions of dollars. Just a little tweak, just a little tweak that you can patent and own and say, this is what you can make a lot of money. Let's go to the next slide. So that's kind of it for credit, but I'm going to go through loans. Does anybody have any questions? Let me look at the questions. It's hard for me to like look at questions and read through the slides. So is there any question?
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
You said because they have to take what is it called? They have to take
Collateral?
Yeah, collateral for a
Right.
loan. And you said that they wouldn't take shoes, but there be shoes out here. They'd be like Jordans be like worth $20,000. They wouldn't take like a $20,000 Jordan.
Depends who your lender is. I can't see a traditional bank taking a pair of Jordans to lend you something. Depends who your lender is. You know, I know StockX is huge amongst you guys, amongst the youth, where you guys, you know, the shoe business is real. It's definitely real. And that's an asset in itself if you hold it well and you flip. But if you're going to use it as an everyday footwear, then it loses its value. You kind of have to, like, shoes are really like art now, right? You're not going to use it. You're going to keep it in its original box. You're going to keep it sealed. So I would more look at the shoe game you're talking about is more of art than it is a shoe, because you're really not wearing them, correct?
Yeah.
You're keeping them like art. So that's art. And I know plenty of people that like hold and buy and sell shoes. There's a whole market for it. StockX does that. StockX is nothing more than a buyer and seller's market for shoes and other apparel, correct?
Yeah.
So if you're using it in that function, fine. But I don't think a bank is going to hold it as a collateral. Maybe somebody, depending on where you're getting a loan, maybe you could leverage with StockX. Like if you needed to like, you know, in business terms, if you kind of use it, if you can buy an option on it, or you can have the ability to hold that as collateral, and they send you more shoes, and in case you don't sell those shoes, they take that shoe. Maybe you could probably work some kind of deal as collateral with that shoe with a company like StockX that's familiar with the shoe business. But I can't see someone that's not familiar with it use it as collateral, if that makes sense.
I see what you mean.
Okay, cool.
Can I say so? I want to commend Kevin too, because I see you're bringing up a lot of examples of like what the interest are amongst, you know, you and your peers and everyday people, which is cars and clothes, and there's actual ways to make money off of that. And I think Sean is really just enforcing that. Yeah, you have to be very careful with these things. These things that we become addicted to, we can let them drown us, or if we have the interest in it and we know it and we're good at it, we can use it to our advantage. So I'm glad that you're pointing those things out. And I think that it does make sense to start looking at some of the things that we consume a lot and really say, how do I make money off of this instead of being a victim?
Absolutely. And that's exactly, and so I'm so happy you made that comment. And I myself had to now just take a step back and say that, and I say it all the time as an adult, because we're so skewed and we're so tainted, we become dream killers. And I see where your mind is going, Kevin, and don't let me kill your dreams. Because if you see an opportunity like he was just saying in this consumer market that you're seeing like, you know what, Sean's saying it's appreciating asset, but I know I can make money from this. I know how to make money from this. Then go for it. Because your generation, and this is why it's so important for you guys to even, get involved and speak out, because you help guide people like myself to say, hey, I forget, there is a StockX, there is this, these are ways that we can leverage, and even things that you traditionally say are going to lose money, where I can find ways to make money. And that's what successful people do. Like, if you get back to like Tesla, Tesla, when you look at the car industry, it was run through Detroit. It was traditional gas guzzling cars, and everybody made the same kind of car and ran it through the same kind of factory. If someone told Elon Musk, if Elon Musk went to them, GM, and said, you know what, I'm going to build a plant in San Francisco. I'm going to make non-gas cars. I'm going to make electric cars. I'm going to have charging stations all over the world. And my car is going to be sell more than your car. My stock is going to trade 100 times more than your stock is going to trade. People would think he's crazy, because people can't envision that, because you're so conditioned and used to seeing things in one manner. So it's for you to leverage what I'm saying and how to take it and make it work in your world and how you can build wealth. So that's the point of the whole program. It's not for me to direct you exactly, do A, B, or C. It's for you to take in this information and what you're doing it, analyzing and saying, okay, how can I make this work? I understand depreciating and appreciating assets. So it's for me to go into this world and make sure I flip that to an appreciating asset that can work for me. I hope I'm making sense. I am? No? Everybody sleeping?
Makes sense to me.
I'm
hoping everybody's taking this in, because this is good.
You're taking as many notes as I am.
Okay, so let's get now to, what I said earlier, when I've said all along, when you have these great ideas, how you really build wealth and make money is you have to, if you're let's get back to the example of the shoes. If you're saying hey, I have an access to get Jordans at $5,000 and I can sell them in the market at $20,000. Well, to build wealth, you don't want to just be buying one shoe at a time. You got to be thinking on a large scale to build up, to be able to buy 100, 200 Jordans at $5,000 and then sell them at $20,000. That's thinking big, that's thinking wealth mindset. So what I always say, you're starting off just building your resume, building trust in the market, buying one shoe, two shoes, flipping it out, building a solid business, showing consistency, showing that you've done this, you know how it works, you know all the barriers around it, you know how it works. And then you're going to try now to use other people's money to grow your business. This when it comes into now seeking loans, obtaining credit, obtaining investors. And this is now, so your hustle now turns to not only getting the shoe, it's satisfying your investors, satisfying the people that are getting the loan. Because the more you satisfy them, the more money will come your way to invest. And this is how you become wealthy. Not just by selling one shoe. I see a lot of guys, one shoe, two shoes, hustling, but you got to grow your brand, grow yourself, and think I want people to see what I'm doing, see how well I'm doing it. When it comes to real estate, if I say, hey, now I see a building that I like, I have honestly in my Rolodex at least 20 people I can call and be like, hey, listen, I saw a building, I want to buy it. And there's going to be no questions asked, because they see the history, what I've done, and how well I've done. So you kind of have to build your resume up. With the one shoe, two shoes that you're buying, you're building your resume, and you're not scared to let people know what you're doing. You don't have to give them all specifics, but let them know what you're doing and how successful you are doing it, so you can build up. And then you start looking into different types of ways in which to finance. And this is what the rich do. This is what the Warren Buffetts does. This is what the Jay-Z's does. This is what the Elon Musk does. They go and they now solicit themselves to get big time investors, to get big time loans, so that they can grow their brand and they're not using their money. Make sense? And if you grow big enough, what you write down on a piece of paper could be worth millions of dollars. If Jay-Z, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett writes something on a white blank piece of paper, that paper has so much value to it. They don't even have to prove it. People will buy that idea, will want to go with the idea because they've proven themselves. And you all have the opportunity to do the same thing. So let's talk about interest rates, common loan terms, right? Things you need to understand. Interest rates, these are the fixed adjusted rate. And you really, I know sometimes we get this money grab, we got a proof for the loan, but we're not looking at the detail. You need to look at what is the rate being charged. You know, that's how people got screwed when we talked about early in the first class about the whole mortgage bust. They didn't see that 5-7 years down the line, the rate is going to adjust to something that's unaffordable. So you need to study what the interest rate is. You need to look how relevant that interest rate is to other rates. Because even myself, I've been in a situation where I've gotten deals thrown at me where the interest rate doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even add up to what's in the market. I'll be like, this is not even current market rate. Where are you getting this rate from? They have the right to charge you any rate they want. And if you jump at a term because the payment looks nice and not really reading the fine print, you'll get screwed. The principal. This is the amount of the original mortgage that you're paying back and the interest. The prepayment penalty, some loans, a lot of loans, especially in the real estate world, they have prepayment penalties, meaning that you have to hold this loan for X amount of time and you can't pay it all off. If you pay it all off, you're going to be hit with hefty fees. So you have to ask those questions. Is there a prepayment penalty? And if there is, what is it? How can I get out of it? Events of default, look and see what happens if you default, what could happen, what can concur. Collateral, we talked about that earlier, what are they asking for? And then another thing is closing costs. Like, what is it going to cost, the cost of obtaining this loan? And a lot of loans come with terms and comes with fees. And you have to look at, does the cost of this loan outweigh the opportunity? If it does, then you may want to look somewhere else or not go in that direction. And don't get, like I said before, with banks and loan agencies, you're just dating them. You're not married to them. Just because they didn't give you the deal that you want, doesn't mean you have to stick with that deal or try to massage and make that deal right with that bank. In this country, you have so many other lending institutions that you can choose from. You can take your business out somewhere else. Amortization is a reduction in your loan balance as you make regular payments. So as you make payments, the balance will go down. Its interest and principal will come off. In some cases, most loans are front loaded so that the banks make their money first and interest, and then the principal comes off down the road. Interest only is a great investment tool for like short-term investments, for even if for your shoe game where the bank will be like, okay, we can give you an interest only payment, and then at end of the 5 years, you have a balloon payment due. So you have all this free up of access capital where you don't have to worry about paying principal. You're just going to pay them their money that they're making from you, the interest. And then after X amount of time, you give them back what you loaned. And a lot of smart, savvy investors will use an interest-only loan. I've used an interest-only loan. When I'm buying real estate that I'm flipping, I know I'm only going to keep it for 2 years, 3 years. I'm like, let me just pay the interest-only payment. And then when I sell it, pay back off the principal with the sale purchase. So it's really something, when you look at different types of loans, an interest-only loan could be something that you could use to your advantage. It frees up cash. Negative amortization, pay less than the interest. That's something I don't agree with. We should really try to stay away from that and always pay over the amount and be careful, because negative amortization, meaning that by the time this loan comes due, you'll owe more than what you originally took out because you're not making the right amount of payment and you're paying less than what's needed to be paid. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a quick example of an amortization schedule. And I'm gonna let Larry just join in. So I'm gonna let Larry bring us through it real quickly.
Hey guys, sorry for joining in late, but yeah, I put this together really quickly just because we had a lot of text earlier, and I just wanted to show you guys. Some people learn better graphically or like visually, so I wanted to show you visually, you know, what all this stuff means. We take a very simple example of a mortgage, right? Let's say, okay, I took out $200,000 for a mortgage, and typically a lot of people do a 30-year mortgage because the longer it is, the lower your interest rate, right? Because if you're paying more over a longer period of time, the bank is more willing to give you a lower rate because they're going to collect more over that time, if that makes sense. And so I'm not going to go over any of this because you don't need to know about the calculations. The bank will show you this. They will give you this thing on the left side called an amortization schedule. which is effectively a fancy name for just how your loan is going to be paid off over time. The only important thing that I want to show you is that in the beginning, so if you look at the second column, right, payments, this is for the first year of your mortgage. The payment stays the same because it's a fixed rate mortgage. We're not talking about adjustables. We're talking about a fixed rate. You're paying 4.5% throughout the 30 years. But where your payment goes changes over time. So in the beginning, because you owe a lot of money, you owe all $200,000 of it, most of your payment, in this case, 75% of it, is going to paying interest, which can sound crazy to you, but that's how a mortgage works. But over time, it flips around. And then as you pay off your mortgage balance, as you pay off the principal is what they call it, then you're going to pay less and less interest. And so if you look on the right side, the blue line is basically, like how you're paying off that $200,000 over time. At the bottom of it is months, so 360 months is 30 years. So you'll see the balance comes down, right? But it starts off a little slower and then it speeds up because in the beginning you're paying the red line, which is interest, which goes the other way, right? So the red line starts growing very fast and then slows down. So without going into any of the mechanics of it, it's just basically when you're paying a mortgage, you should be aware of how much your payment goes into interest versus paying off the actual balance of the mortgage. And that will vary based on your interest rate. That will vary based on your time, and that will vary based on how much you take out. So any questions there? So John, I'll kick it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Just a quick question. Are we going too fast? Is everybody keeping up? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All good.
All right, let's go to the next slide, Larry. Or sorry, Rachel. Okay, so I put this together last night. I said I want to give you some just buying and financing real estate, the wealth mindset, all right? And I just want to go through some terms and just kind of put it together how it all makes sense, okay? I am a huge fan of owning real estate, especially in New York City. You know, it's so hard once you get into like paying large sums of rent to go from renting to owning, because rent takes up so much of your money here in New York because rent is so expensive. So if you can transition that, even if you're still at home, or if you're an opportunity where you're not paying a lot of rent, if you could transition that to, to owning, and, and I don't care what scale you start off at, it doesn't matter how small, especially in New York, because, the first property I bought for $80,000, in less than a year, I sold it for 160. Like, the upsell in New York City in general is always done well, regardless of the market condition. I think it'll always continue to do well. And worst case scenario, even if you're not able to do that, you can just pay a mortgage and then actually have you have the access to the capital when you retire or down the road. So it's just a good idea, in my opinion, to look to buying real estate. So terms that I want you to understand when it was a wealth mindset and how real estate really works from a strategic perspective is, let's talk about first the purchase agreement, okay? And it's a binding contract between a buyer and a seller that outlines the details of the home and sale transaction. So how this works, you look at a property, you see it, and first understand the function of your attorney. Your attorney is not a business person. He's not a business advisor. He's there to make sure that everything is done legally. Can you ask him some questions business-wise? Of course, but you shouldn't depend on them as your advisor. That's where people make the mistake. I don't want to quote Donald Trump too often about the art of a deal, but one thing he said, which made sense to me, and I heard this before he was president. So this is before he was president. He said, he calls his lawyers once the deal is already done. And it's now for them just to put all the legality around it. And, it's funny because the way he conducted himself as president, I can tell some of his team, his lawyers, was like, whoa, we didn't see this coming. Because he's really looking at them to okay, let's just make this kosher. But I am the businessman and I am the guy that's going to drive this initiative. And that's how I look at it when it comes to real estate. I'll call my lawyer when I have a deal. I don't call him to ask him what he thinks about the deal. what he thinks about the opportunity. I'm calling him and say, hey, I'm buying X amount of property, speak to the seller's attorney, or I'm selling my property. I'm not telling how much should I sell it for or what should I sell it for. No, I am the businessman, you are my attorney. And you have to have that mindset. So if you're not up to par with knowledge and your attorney is schooling you on that business, that means you don't know enough about that business. So purchase agreement. This is where you are negotiating the deal, either on the buyer's side or on the sell side. And everything is negotiable. Everything is negotiable. Everything can have a term, condition, can have a rider to it. Rider meaning you can change something, you can add something, you can modify something. And this is where, I always say you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. Because the way you do that is that you're buying at a good deal and you're buying knowing there's an opportunity. Even when I look at real estate, I say, don't try to sell me what you think is going to happen 10 years from now. I don't want to hear there's going to be a Disney World in downtown Brooklyn. And when that comes, everybody's property is going to turn into $30 million properties. Because I'm not banking on Disney World opening up downtown Brooklyn. I'm banking on what's happening now and how I can adjust and what I see is going to happen. Don't tell me about these projects that you think is going to happen, because guess what? I'll just give this analogy. Madison Square Garden is in the middle of New York City, in the middle of Manhattan. Is that the most expensive real estate in Manhattan? So you tell me about this surge and something happening, all this doesn't mean that that's going to make it the most expensive real estate and it's going to make sure that I'm going to make my money. So I don't want to hear that. I want to know when I'm looking at something, I've done my homework and I can see what's trending, what's happening, or I'm buying. And I always say, I'm buying into the now, not into the later. And maybe it's hurt me in a sense that I haven't hit the big deals and I haven't hit the home runs like I mentioned early, but I got a lot of good singles that I can talk about. Got a lot of good double hits and I sleep well at night. There's not too many deals that had me can't sleep. And if they are, then it's not a deal for me because I love my sleep. Okay, so you want to be able to negotiate very well and be bold with your questions. Like I love the gentleman that was asking all the questions. They challenging me, Sean. No, this is not a depreciation. This is a depreciating. That's how you have to come when it comes to business. Be bold with your questions. Be confident with your questions and ask them. Because once you sign something, and I've signed bad contracts. I was in court for 7 years with a dumb contract I should have never signed. I should have never trusted this person, and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to get out of this idiotic thing I should have never been involved in. And it was a real estate deal that I was just. Long story, I'd take up this whole class to tell you about that. If you want to talk to me on the side, I can tell you the deal gone bad with Sean, okay? So next, mortgage. A mortgage is one's property is a guarantee to get a loan. The debtor or mortgager, i.e. you, is the owner of the property, while the creditor, the mortgagee, the bank, is the owner of the loan. When the mortgage transaction is made, the debtor gets the money with the loan, which is often used to finance part of the home purchase price and promise to pay the loan. I look as a mortgagee or the bank as my silent partner. If there's a time where I could do all cash, I don't know if I would, because it limits how many properties I can buy. I could put $1 million into one property, or I can put $100,000 each into 10 properties and own 10, and that's the wealth mindset. Some people are like, oh, I want to do all cash. Well, then it limits your growth. It limits what else you can do. I'd rather have 10 mortgages and 10 properties than no mortgage in one property. Your choice. That's the wealth mindset. I'm using the bank as my partner. And the only thing I have to do to keep my partner happy, which is the bank, is make those payments. And sometimes I think, banks, lenders may be better than actual physical partners, because guess what? If I had a guy loan me $1 million to buy a property, he's going to be calling me every minute. How are we doing? How's the property? How's it going? What's going on? Where's things happening? What's going? When are we going to sell? When are we going to do this? With the bank, they're not breathing out of my neck as long as I make that payment. So they're not a bad partner if the terms are favorable. Okay, so here's now where we get into the secret sauce here of real estate. It's called refinancing a mortgage, okay? I'm sure you've all heard the terms of refinancing and what it means and so forth. So refinancing, you're trading in your old mortgage for a new one and possibly a new balance. When you refinance your mortgage, you get a new mortgage and use the money to pay off your old mortgage. People often refinance a mortgage to make advantage of a lower interest rate. So in this wonderful country, you can get out of your mortgage very simple and go to a new bank. As long as there's not a prepayment penalty, then you can transfer your mortgage from one bank to another. Here's where the wealth is made and where the money is made. So we get into the next line, which is called equity. It's your home market value minus how much you owe on the mortgage. In other words, it's how much money you've received when you sell your home and paying off the mortgage. So let me give you why I love New York City real quick. New York, if you know, the tri-state area is islands. You know, Manhattan is an island surrounded by water. Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island is one big island surrounded by water. And what it does, it limits your the scarce resource is land, right? New York, you can't build more land. I mean, they're doing landfills. Somebody could come up and say, well, there's landfills in downtown Brooklyn. Yes, you're right, there are landfills. Generally speaking, you cannot grow out New York City, tri-city area any more than what it is. You know, places like Florida, Georgia, their real estate prices are not as high as New York because they have a supply of land. There's a lot of land there. It's not an island. They can keep growing out. They can build suburbs. Their infrastructure is great. The highways are great. So you can get from one exit to another exit real quick. If you guys know New York City, it's hard. The infrastructure is very poor. It's hard to get around. So you want to generally be close to where everything is. And that's what drives up the price of real estate because infrastructure is poor, land is scarce, and there's a lot of people wanting to live in this small area. So everybody's kind of vying for the same space, which will drive up real estate value. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Hence why prices in New York keep going up. Hence why you could go South Bronx, East New York, Brownsville, and see these old buildings. You're like, how are they selling for $1 million? And someone's saying, I can get that same building in Florida. That can buy me 4 buildings. In Atlanta, I can build a house. Yes, but yes, you can. You may be able to get 10 houses in Mississippi for the one building and one broken down, gutted old building in East New York. But the difference is that building has value in New York because of the demand for it. People want to live there. You can build apartments in it. You can have tenants in it. You can't have 10 tenants in a building like that in Mississippi or in Atlanta because you know what? People are just going to go live somewhere else. And friends that I know have moved down to the South. Yes, they have huge houses, but they were like, when you get off at the airport, it's a 3-hour drive to get to my house. Or like, I have this huge house and you know, 100 bedrooms and I paid $100,000 for it 5 years ago and now it's worth $110,000. They don't go up in value because there's a lot of supply. And I'm not discouraging anybody to buy in those areas, but for me personally, those would be my like one-time buy. I'm buying in Atlanta, I'm moving to Atlanta, and I'm looking just to live and love the place. But if I'm looking from an investor's perspective, I know a lot of people that go outside of New York and do some investing, and the returns are, to me personally, this is my experience, are not as high as they would be in New York because of what I just explained to you when it comes to scarce resources and the land, right? So if you have an opportunity to live and buy in New York, you're doing yourself a really good favor. And I will say, whereas there's not a bad area to buy in New York. You know, when I first moved to New York, people would even look at like Brownsville, East New York. Now those are all prime areas. And I say, even when it comes to where do I look to buy in New York, follow the A train. Wherever is close to the A train, a few blocks off the A train, it's a good buy. Because people want to live near the train, and the A train is the fastest train in New York City, and it takes you from wherever you need to go to in a quick amount of time. So, you know, if you're looking follow the train lines. Those are how the map, and I wouldn't say buy like a block from the train, but like a 3 or 4 blocks you're not hearing the subway is probably a good buy. So the thing about it is equity. So basically what you are able to see your property or your investment grow in value towards what you owe is called equity, the difference. And banks will then re-lend you money based on that amount. So if you bought a property for $100,000 and it's now worth $200,000, the bank is saying, well, we'll lend you, you know, close to usually 70% of what your property is now worth. So you owe 100 and they say, we'll lend you up to $170,000. And the 100 minus the 70 is what we call equity. And they'll just give you that back in a check. And if you're smart with it, you can use that money then to purchase other real estate. So you get into the game now of using other people's money to buy real estate. And the wealthy person, the smart person will tell you, he may not want to tell you, but the truth of the matter is, if you can afford to buy one property and that property makes money, you can buy 10 properties. You keep growing, you can keep pulling out equity, buying those properties, as long as you go back to what I said as far as your mortgage, as bank being your partner, and make your commitments and make those payments, the bank will continue to lend you money, you continue to grow, you continue to own multiple properties. And before you know it, you'll be like, wow, I have 4 properties and I owe $400,000 and they're worth $2 million. I'm a millionaire. Whoa. And it'll surprise you how fast and quickly it can happen if you start thinking in that mindset and keeping sure that you satisfy your investors, your mortgage, your bank, and keep thinking in terms of equity. So I can't spend too much time on it. That was as quickly as I could. Hopefully everybody understands. It just kind of encourages you to think and grow. Yes. Someone has a question.
Sorry, have you heard of like, I think you talked about this, but it's like when you buy like a house, it's like a, what's it called? Like a two-story house or family house, and you
Two
live
family,
there,
correct, correct.
and you live there, and then you rent someone else. So basically, you live rent free.
Correct, or partially, yes, absolutely. And your property is growing in value while you're living rent free. Absolutely.
Damn. But is that more expensive than getting a regular home, or?
Well, I don't know in terms of regular, but in terms of, can it be more expensive? It can be, but it can be a lot cheaper as well if you buy it right and look right and find and do the math, do your homework, look at the purchase agreement, make sure that when you're adding into, okay, how much is a mortgage going to be? How much of my payments are going to be? What can I reasonably get conservatively? I'm always very conservative what I can get in rent. I'm not, when somebody tells you like, oh, this apartment can get $2,000 a month in rent. Yeah, in prime, but I'm very conservative. So if someone tells me that, I'd probably chop that number down to like $1,500 and still see if it makes sense. And even when it comes to tenants, which I have 22 tenants, I always make my tenants feel that they're getting a better deal, that I'm the one losing. I'm the sucker. Like, oh my God, Sean only charges us this amount of money. Because what it does for me, it makes those tenants feel like, oh, they're happy to be there. They feel that they're getting a deal. And the more than chances are they're going to pay the rent because they don't want to feel like they don't want to lose this deal. So I have always been a fan of like charging a little bit under market just so everybody feels like they're winning. And I win because you're going to pay me rent consistently. So yeah, hope that answers your question. I think I went a little off on a tangent, but I think I answered the question. All right. Especially during this time, absolutely. Your investors, your tenants, your staff, even your boss, these are people that, you have to make your best effort to make them, even like, if you work for somebody, your boss can be your number one promoter, can promote your brand, say how well you're doing, say how good you're doing. And it makes sense to manage and maintain that relationship. I know it's not always easy. I've had bosses that were quote unquote just horrible, but I always try to put my emotions aside and focus on the prize. And in my head, know that everything is for a time. Eventually, this person will not be my boss, but just hope during that time, I'm able to get as much out of it as I can. Let's go to the next slide. Investment accounts and asset classes. So we're going to talk about the different type of investments real quickly. Larry, I'll let you start with this one.
Sure, sorry. So investment accounts, I want to make a very, before we talk about any of this, I want to talk about a couple of things. A lot of people ask us about investments, and the quick disclaimer I'm going to make is we're not financial advisors. And if you want advice, the best thing to do is to talk to a financial advisor, and more importantly, do the research yourself, because there's going to be a lot of people who, your friends and people who you can trust, even your family, right? And I know they're all good people, but they're going to tell you, invest in this or buy this, or Bitcoin's going up, or any crazy, whatever, crazy or not crazy opportunity that's out there. And in the end, right, the risk is yours. And so I cannot stress enough, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, whether it's bonds, whether it's any sort of investment, that you have to do your own research, right? And you can't, there's no such thing as a sure thing, right? So the two important concepts that I want to talk about while we're at that. One is the idea of diversification. And does anyone know what diversification means? Anyone?
You said what? Gentrification?
Does anyone know what diversification means?
Diversification.
Karina said to diversify, but what does that mean? What is diversifying?
You want?
Not the phrase, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Oh, it means like don't stick to one thing. Like,
yep, don't stick. Yeah, those are all great ways to think about it, because you don't
keep looking around.
If one thing blows up, right, you don't want to be shortchanged. You don't want to be stuck with nothing, right? And I'm not gonna tell you about the math or anything like that, but it has been proven over and over and over and over again that in the long run, maybe not in the short run, but in the long term, if you diversify, you will come out better than someone who doesn't. So, there might be a lot of temptation, if a stock is doing really well, or like, I don't know, even if a sneaker, if people are into the sneaker game and it's doing really well, right? That you're like, okay, I'm going to put all my savings into this. Don't do that. That's the only thing I'll tell you. Don't do that. You can do it. You can do some of it. You can invest in it. You can invest in whatever you want, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. The second thing I'm going to talk about is the idea of risk, right? And so everything has risk. As I said, nothing is a sure thing. Even the most sure thing is not a sure thing, unless it's something like putting your money into a bank, right? Because the bank, the Federal Reserve literally guarantees your savings up to a certain amount, right? But for most things you do, there is a risk, whether it's a career, whether it's a investment, whether it's anything. And you have to think, I think Sean will agree with this, you have to think about how are you going to get properly compensated for the amount of risk that you take. And I don't know if that makes sense, but let's say, let's use an example like this. So if I were giving Sean a loan versus, if I were giving Sean a loan versus if I were giving Rachel a loan, right? And this is nothing to do with any of them, but let's say if Rachel is alone and she runs her own business and it's been around for 20 years and it's, you know, never lost money, it's been doing well, versus Sean, who has a new business, it's a new venture, it may or may not do well, it's an exciting opportunity, but there's nothing for me to base my decision on, right? No data. The question is not who am I going to loan to? The question is who am I going to charge the higher interest rate, right? So this goes back to credit. So who am I going to charge the higher or lower interest rate? Anyone?
That's a good question.
Just shout it out. Is Sean going to be more expensive, or is Rachel's loan going to be more expensive?
What do you guys think?
Wait, sorry.
So Sean is a new business. Rachel is a business that's been around for 20 years. If I'm trying to loan them some money, who am I going to charge a higher interest rate on that?
The business.
Which one?
I would say Sean because he's new.
Sorry.
Sean, we got a couple people saying Sean, right?
Yeah, and in the chat, there's someone said the newer one, probably Sean, because he's risky.
Because he's risky, right? So again, we're coming back to the idea of risk. So risk is not a bad thing. You just need to make sure that if you're on the other side of that risk, you need to get something back, right? And so if I'm a lender in this case, I'm going to want a higher interest rate. So if Sean's business goes under, at least I have something to take back. So I know we're up to time, so maybe I'll try to be quick on this stuff, and we can continue it next time. But just as a start, a lot of you guys are, you know, probably thinking about investing, and you've heard things like stocks or bonds and real estate or any of the stuff. And so before we get into all of that, I think the number one thing, there are a lot of different ways to do it. There are a lot of ways to access this stuff, especially now with technology, right? Some of you guys might have heard of things like Robinhood, right? Things like, what was it, like Acorns, things like
Betterment,
Stash, Betterment. There's a lot of these platforms out there, especially for like millennials to do this stuff, or younger people to do this stuff, because you can access it on your mobile phone. Some of them, like, there's no physical branch or location for you to go into, like you do it all online, which I'm a big fan of. So you can open up these accounts to do these things. And there are a couple of different accounts that I just want to go over really quickly. So if you have a job with an employer, I think most employers after a certain size are required to offer a certain retirement account, otherwise known as a 401k. Some of you guys might have heard of that. And a lot of 401ks, the employer you will put in your money to invest for your retirement, and you are not allowed to take it out without a penalty until you reach retirement age, which I think is 65, if I'm correct. But
who wants to wait that long?
But so you're not putting all your money in there, right? So you have to weigh it. You have to weigh we're going to talk about budgeting next class. So what is the budget that I need to live, and what is the money that I have to save for myself, right? And the reason why you want to do that is twofold. One, we talked about compounding, right? Last class. Compounding means that, like, every year if you're earning 5% interest, let's say, for example, you're going to get more than 5% because every year you're earning it on the total, right? It's going to keep growing more than just 5%. So that's one. And over the long term, it adds up. It adds up a lot. And two, the big reason is because you don't get charged taxes on the money you put in, which is huge, right? So whatever your tax rate is, if you put your money into a 401k plan, you put your money in pre-tax, so you do not get taxed on it on the way in for the most part. And when it is, as long as you come up, when you take it out when you're 65, I think, Sean, you get the benefit. You don't get taxed on that either, right?
59.5. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's deferred tax. Yeah, it's deferred
Oh,
tax.
it's
So
deferred. The tax is, sorry,
Yeah.
this tax is deferred. So you pay the taxes later on. But would you rather pay the taxes now, or would you rather pay the taxes later on?
Later.
Right? Later on, because just it's a time thing, but also you get the benefit of the compounding today. You get the benefit of all your investments making money today and over the next whatever, how many decades. And so in a way, you're actually, you would be able to make more money in the long run. So that's why retirement accounts are important. Again, like I agree with you. It's really hard to think that many years in the future. But if you have an opportunity to start a 401k plan, and unless you have other sort of near term, like I get it, if you have to go to the hospital and you have a medical bill that you need to pay off, if you have student loans that you have to pay off, you can't necessarily put money into that. But if you can, I really encourage every single one of you guys to put as much up to, they have a limit, but put as much, and if not, max out your 401k plan.
Wait, I have a question real quick.
Sure.
Like, it's about the CDs. I think I used to have one when I was younger, but like, what is it again? Isn't it like when?
So I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into that next class because I want to go through each one of these individually and talk about how they're different. Because I talked about risk, right? The short answer is I talked about risk and return. So the less risky this asset class, the less risky, the less you're going to make out of it. So you see CDs are near the top. It says it's less risky. So they're probably not going to make you as much money as a stock, but at the same time, they're probably less likely to lose money because they're not risky. So that's the short answer. But
we'll get more into all the definitions. Next class, we'll take it up from this exact page.
Yeah, we will go into more of it, but I just really wanted, like, if there was one big thing I want to take away from this, at least the top part is you have all these options to invest, so you have no excuses. And I will get into brokerage accounts and I will get into 529 plans, but from a retirement account standpoint, it is great. Like, you know, if you told me I can avoid taxes, like I can avoid paying taxes today, sign me up, right?
Yeah, and like Larry, I know the question you asked was, you know, that's so long ago and it's still down the road, but these are all tools that the wealth mindset uses to their advantage to grow their wealth. Like, for example, if you're contributing to your 401k, they have what companies have matching programs, and that's no risk. So if you put in $1, sometimes I've seen them they do a match of 3 times the amount that you deposit. So they put in $1, you invest $1, they put in $3 for you. There's no better way to grow at your balance as fast as that. And then the plan is all, and what can happen also down the road is that there's allowed like certain events that you can pull out that money without having to pay additional taxes. And one of them is to purchase your first home, to purchase real estate, you know, for other things. So you could use your 401k, which I do, a lot of people do not encourage you to leverage to buy a piece of property, to save for that, and then use that, then pay yourself back, which we'll get into more in the next class. So these are all, you know, what Larry's explaining, are all wealth tools that can help you achieve and grow wealth. And then, you know, I know as a young person, you're always thinking of the now, but if you can work, you know, the 20s if you're studying, the 30s if you're, you know, investing, and then when you hit your 40s, you're starting to get into a little bit of cruise control, you're not going to have a bad life. You're not going to have a bad life. Yeah, so I think we'll take it up from here. We want to get into asset class, and I want to talk about also the big thing in red there, which is an investment that you are all probably going to be one time in your life asked to get involved with, but it won't be called that. And I just want to kind of talk about that a little bit deeper next class. We ran out of time because I didn't adhere to the time on the slide, so I apologize, but you know, there's so much I'd like to get in, so hopefully everybody got something out of today's class.
And we can spend hours and hours and hours and hours on all this stuff. And so if you want to do more research, you know, Google is your friend, or you can just send us a question.
And again, we don't have class next week, so if you want to Google and maybe even come back in the following week with some questions, you know, all the better.
Exactly.
everybody's got break next week, and I hope everybody has a great break. You could
Yeah.
keep thinking about how you become more financially clean and bring back some questions.
We'll be back after the Easter Bunny leaves.
No, definitely. But we really
Thank you
appreciate
so
the
much.
participation as well, too. I definitely want to just clap it up for everybody because I feel like there's a lot more questions and a
Absolutely.
lot more participation verbally as well.
No, it's been great. It's been great. I feel the energy. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying it and getting something out of it.